All right, here we go. So in last year we finished off going through the halachas of preparation for Pesach, and we got through Kaddish of the Pesach Seder. We're going to pick up now by Orchatz, go through the various halachas and how to go about doing it. All right, so Orchatz is we wash our hands without a bracha. The reason we wash our hands without a bracha is because in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, when the highest standards of purity were kept and were enforced, there was a halacha that one must wash their hands before eating something that had been dipped into water. Right? So if something had been dipped into water, it makes it susceptible of becoming impure. And there's a dispute whether or not this halacha continues to apply nowadays, but the bottom line is, whether or not we're required nowadays to wash our hands before touching a wet food, practically speaking, people wash their hands before eating bread and eating matzah. That's usually when people wash their hands. However, according to everybody, since our job at the Seder is to arouse the curiosity of the children, we specifically wash at the Pesach Seder because the kids are going to be like, hello, you're eating some celery, you're eating some potatoes, you don't wash your hands before potatoes and celery, or even though karpas can really be from any vegetable as long as it's not a mar vegetable, but there's some that I think some Sfardim use, I've seen people use green onions, a few different green onions, a few different minhagim out there. But we want to do something that's unusual, and it's something that's going to arouse the curiosity, and it's going to lead to the explanation of Yitzias Mitzrayim, or Yitzia Mi Mitzrayim. Okay, the way this is done is the head of the household should have the water brought to the table. Generally speaking, people already have the vinegar or the salt water on the table, and that's how we did it. What I mean by it's being brought to the head of the table is that the actual washing, it would be appropriate, as I say every year, it's appropriate that if you're sitting, let's say somebody's dealing with their grandchildren, or parents with children, or you have guests that are already, adults, and you have younger kids. So by us, we would all fight over this chus to bring water and the washing basin to our parents to wash their hands, and that would be a proper thing in ways of chinuch of getting it done. Okay, so that's orchatz. We wash our hands. Karpas. Any vegetable that's fit for a Bar Priyadama is fit to be used as karpas as long as it's not fit to be done for the mitzvah of mar. So you can't use your mar for your karpas. Horseradish and lettuce are clearly fit for mar, and therefore one may not use them as karpas, but as we said before, many people use celery, some green onions, people use potatoes, but really anything that's a Bar Priyadama would suffice. Technically, yeah, it's not fit for mar. We dip the karpas into salt water or vinegar. Now here's the deal. The deal is that usually manners dictate one use a fork. Right? Ask my wife. Nobody's going near her stuff with their fingers. However, look, why are we washing our hands? Because if you touch a wet vegetable in the times of Beis HaMikdash, wash your hands. Wash your hands. So really, the whole sense of washing our hands is if you actually touch the wet vegetable. So for hygiene, I would recommend having a longer celery stick or a bigger piece of potato, or I guess take the potato with a fork and dip it in, and then use one's hands. Again, one has fulfilled the mitzvah of karpas if they have used a fork, but I would say following the svara, following the logic that we explained why and how this was done, I guess it's ideal for one to use one finger. Just make sure you don't get in anybody else's way with your hygiene.
So
reversing.
We give over what we do at our house. Everyone has their own little cup of salt water.
Beautiful. All right. Or you can do like a cornbloom house. Everybody has their own cup of salt water, and shalom al yisrael.
How about how the Arabs they put their hand in the pot with their thumb kicked back and they go in?
All right. That's what they do in the Dutch house. All right. That's where I guess doesn't get anybody's way to do that. Reversing letters of karpas means samach perach, 600,000 people worked, so it's referring to the slavery, it's a shibud, and therefore there's an interesting shaila whether one reclines when eating karpas. There's different minhagim about whether, I've seen a lot of people don't recline, people do recline. Samach perach. Samach, 600,000, perach is hard labor, backbreaking labor. Okay, so it's the salt water is symbolic of the tears of the Jewish people and their suffering, and the Pais can bring down that when we're studying the bracha on karpas, keep in mind that it should apply to the mar, which will be used later on during the Suda. I never fully understood this. I guess I'm assuming, here's one of my proofs, that it must have not taken them so long to get from karpas to mar. Hint, hint to people who have 4 hours in between, because otherwise your bracha is not valid of Adama on what you meant, what you did later on. But probably not. It probably still took time, but you can't eat continuously. You can't keep eating to the Seder. You have your karpas, then you're waiting to eat the rest. And that Gavin's saying that's a gavril. That's a raya. It's a raya of Ice. You should be eating some candies along the way, which, by the way, is a minhag in the Tana family. The way that my father kept us entertained at the Suda is there were bowls of candy on the Seder table throughout the meal, little candies, and every time we asked a question, we got a candy. That was individually wrapped, and that's what we do. It keeps everybody entertained. You can make rules for the kids. You know, if you still get and get 15 candies, you can only eat 3 at the Seder. The rest need to be saved for tomorrow.
Chocolate chips.
Chocolate chips, okay.
I stole that.
Hearing various minhagim.
I stole that idea from the last time you said it with my grandkids. What they do is they hoard the candy.
Great.
They don't eat it. They hoard it.
Okay, that's a geschmack. It's like nafikoyman. You gotta yes, Rabbi.
What age can they not eat in between? Because I was just talking to my kids about this, because we like to have, we have an 8-year-old, but then we have a 13-year-old. Is he able to still?
I'm not answering. I'm not answering. You gotta use your seichel as a parent to know where kids are. Use your seichel as a parent to know, if they're gonna start to regret and start to be upset about it, whatever makes a broken schmack for them. You don't need to.
You've heard kids.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's not. I'm not gonna answer. Each mishpacha is gonna be different. Okay, so we have kadesh, orchatz, karpas, and then yachatz. We break the middle matzah. We break the middle of the 3 matzahs. The smaller part is put back in for Maitzi Matzah. The smaller part represents Yetzias Mitzrayim, and the bigger one, as we explained Shabbos afternoon, represents the coming Geula that Bez Hashem we're going to be zeicher to this year with Hashem's help, right? Which is going to far outshine the miracle is going to far outshine Yetzias Mitzrayim. So we take the bigger half of the matzah because it's going to be a bigger Geula. The Gemara tells us that the smaller Geula is not going to be forgotten about. We'll still talk about it, but it'll be like the baby brother of the Geula that's going to take place when we go back to Yerushalayim, and that's the afik. We're putting away for the afikoyim, which is going to come at the Pesach Seder time of the Geula. The custom is for the children to steal it, or quote unquote steal it, or some places you have the children find it, you have the children hide it, and the adults have to find it. The whole purpose is to keep the children awake until the afikoyim is eaten and redeemed and ultimately put away. And like I say every year, there's apparently this custom that has come about that once the kids have it, then the parents need to give a prize. They have to give a present or get the afikoyim back. But a little secret to everybody who's running a Pesach Seder is you could use a different matzah. So if the kid gets too greedy, you can tell them to keep their matzah, and you're moving on with your Pesach Seder, and you leave them hanging in that way. That happened to me a few times. As you can tell, I still have carry some of that. Some of that with me when my father would. I tell my father I haven't gotten over it, and I tell him I need new rollerblades, and he would say no you don't, and I'd say yes I do. You're not getting back your afikoyim, and he would say okay keep it, and break another matzah and keep moving. And I'm stuck hanging with an old half a matzah. It's one way to keep a kid hanging.
How long did it take you to realize that?
1 year.
1 year.
1 year is all it takes. Okay, some have a custom to put the afikoyim on their shoulder before hiding it to recall how the Yidden carried the dough on their shoulders. There are those who have a custom, they walk around the table. They stand up and they carry it on their shoulders. And the reason why we take 3 matzahs at the Pesach Seder is so that even though we're going to need 2 for Lechem Mishnah, when it comes time for Motzi Matzah, you need 2. Like we have 2 loaves of bread, right? So we need 2 whole matzahs. So we take 3 because we're going to break one by yachatz. So now we'll still have 2 remaining for Lechem Mishnah. The reason why we put the 3rd matzah, the half that's smaller, back in is because Magid, we start out halach ma'anya. Like this is the poor man's bread. We want to have a small morsel of of bread, quote unquote, of matzah, in the same manner that a poor person is accustomed to sustaining themselves on a small morsel. So it's interesting. We have 3 matzahs, we're going to need 2. The third one we put back in to keep with us during the magid. It should be like the smaller piece, and then the bigger piece is put away for the bigger gula afikomen. It's really beautiful to see how every matzah is there for a purpose. Like everything has its, the 2 whole ones have a purpose. The smaller one's there to say the Haggadah on the little morsel. The bigger one's going to talk about the Geula, which is this constant contradiction that we're going to get into by the Manishtana. Right, on one hand we're talking about slavery, the other hand we're talking about redemption, and there's all this royalty at the Seder. It's like, well, what's going on? You make up your mind, are we sad, are we happy, what's doing? And that's the Pesach Seder, it's the journey. It's the journey of Klal Yisrael. Okay, which leads us to Magid. Magid is when we recite the Haggadah. We should have in mind that Magid, some people have in mind that Magid shouldn't go too slow. Some people have in mind Magid shouldn't go too fast. What we should have in mind by Magid is that it is the biblical command of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Right? There's 2 mitzvahs, like we said in the previous year. There's 2 biblical obligations, 2 mitzvah deraisa that we perform at the Pesach Seder, Achilas Matzah, and Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Magid is to tell over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. I want to say something very important. You don't have to say every word of Magid. Now, there's a lot of power and beauty in the Haggadah, but the purpose of Magid is actually just to create a framework for us to tell the story. The main purpose of Magid is Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. You don't have to say, all we have to say is from Rabbi Gamliel, and then Pesach Matzah Mar. Okay, so if you have people who don't like sitting at the table for too long, or they have a hard time, they got jumping around, dancing the pants, or they're pacers, or they like sitting on the couch, whatever, everybody with their own Pesach Seder and their own style table, at least we should encourage those who are obligated at the Seder, anybody over Bar Bas Mitzvah, to be there from Rabbi Gamliel Eimer until the end of Magid. But the main thing is to keep in mind to fulfill the biblical commandment of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. We begin Magid by uncovering the matzahs and saying Halach Ma'anya out loud. This is the bread of poverty that our grandfathers ate, our ancestors ate in Mitzrayim. Anybody who's hungry should come and eat. Anybody in need should come and be satiated. Okay? Come and as we explained, there's a difference between being hungry and being in need. And at the Pesach Seder, our responsibility as those who are going to be leading the Seder is A, people should eat, and B, whatever need they have should be satisfied. Now, not financial need, but emotional need, spiritual need, like run the Seder according to the needs of the people. No family runs the same Seder. We cannot compare our starim to any other family or any Seder we've ever been at. Nor should our Seder be judged by our previous Seder. Every Seder should be unique to that year, who's there, what that person needs, what that group of people need. Don't worry how last year's Seder went. Don't worry what happened 15 years ago at the Seder, or what you saw at some rabbi's table at the Pesach Seder. Don't worry about that. Come and eat. Whatever your needs are, this is the Pesach Seder for you. I'm going to run the Pesach Seder for you. There's some kids this age this year that we didn't have that last year, so we're going to cater to them for a little bit. There's kids who are having a little bit of a struggle this year. They need an emotional pick-me-up from their parents or siblings, or the Bubby and the Zaidi, or the Bubby and Alta Zaidi. I didn't need to focus on that last year. This year I'm focusing on it. So we're taking care of the needs of who. Last year I didn't have these guests. This year I had these guests. Last year the guests needed one thing. This year, make our Pesach Seder unique to this year, taking care of our mitzvahs again, not like anybody else, but also we don't have to judge it by the way it's always been done, by the way it's been. Let the Haggadah itself be our framework that we work out of, not comparing it to any other vision that we have. I actually find that when I try to run my Seder with a specific vision, I prepare the Haggadah for a little bit beforehand. Obviously, we're already giving shir on Haggadah, and I have the opportunity to get paid to learn the Haggadah. So for me, it's much easier than the rest of you, right? to prepare. It's my job. It's amazing. Wow, for the schus. It's worthwhile from here till Pesach if we haven't started yet. Take 5-10 minutes a day to just look over the Haggadah, so we're not seeing it for the first time in a year when we sit down when we sit down at the Pesach Seder. Okay, it's kedai to look it over a bit. Okay. The children ask the manishtana. If there's no children, the wife asks the manishtana. One should even ask the manishtana to themselves. Rebbe Tzim Kotler would ask the manishtana in Lakewood Yeshiva. As we said, manishtana, the reason why we ask, even though we know the answers, it's a springboard to opening the conversation, and it's also a sign of freedom. It's led to a great Shal Shudas conversation that Rav Moshe pointed out, that it's and Chaim had a good response to that as well. So we have the Olam here that was there on Shabbos afternoon. But asking questions is freedom, and it's important that we ask. We encourage asking. But slaves are not allowed to ask. They're certainly not allowed to ask about things that are the ikr, about the main thing of growth in life. And it's the greatest symbol of real chayros, of elevated freedom, not just being chavshi. Chavshi means I'm not bound by chains. Chayros is I'm elevated, is being able to sit at the Seder and ask questions. Okay. We now take the Seder plate and we return it back to its spot. At the beginning we pushed it away a little bit so it looked a little strange for the children. And we begin the Haggadah with Avodah Mayinu. Some have a custom as we go through Magid that only the head of the Seder, the head of the household, or whoever's running the Seder says the Haggadah and everybody else listens. Or some have a custom everybody says the Haggadah together. This was the custom in our family. This is my father's custom. The most important thing is, again, that we use the Haggadah as a framework, but not that you are necessarily like focused on every last iota. Now, I don't want to sound like it's not important. Again, the Haggadah is Halik. If you can get every word in, then we should strive for that. But the most important thing is to understand. So if I don't understand the Hebrew that I'm saying, look in the English, or straighten it out. Create a picture, create a painting of what this picture that we're going to be discussing and that we're going to be teaching over to our families is. During Magid, there are 16 times we use our finger to displace wine from the cup. We have the Tetzach Hadash V'Achav, Dom V'Eish V'Simreis Oshan, as well as the 10 plagues. We do this because it recalls the admission of the sorcerers that this was Taka, the finger of Hashem, Etzba Likim, which is fascinating for us Americans. We don't really have access to black magic. And for us, when we hear the miracles that took place in Egypt, we're like, oh, that's amazing. It must be Hashem. Black magic. Yeah. Right? It must be Hashem. Yeah, you know what? In Mitzrayim, there was so much tumah and there was so much black magic. The sorcerers were able to do most of the things, a lot of the miracles that were taking place. There was a lot of stuff going on over there. And therefore, for the sorcerers to say, Etzba Lekimi, like there's no way. We know all the powers of everything that exists in the world. And Hashem makes the power of Tumah in contrast to the amount of Tara. So the more Hashem does Tara, there's going to be access people do Tumah, which makes it even harder to see Hashem in that way. And for the leaders of all those areas to say Etzba Lekimi was huge. It was like earth-shattering. It's a big, big, big deal. So 16 times we have Etzba Lekimi, the finger. We take our finger and we displace some wine from the cup. Okay, and as we said before, although everybody should be present throughout Magid, everybody's, at least the main mitzvah, is that we're obligated to recite from Rebbe Gamliel through the second cup. And at minimum, if a person is not able to, let's say a person Chas v'Shalom is ill, or for whatever reason people aren't able, at minimal they should say Pesach Matzah Marar, as well as the reasons, right? As well as the reasons. Okay. After Magid we get to Rachza. Rachza, we wash our hands. We say this is. There's a paragraph when we say Pesach Matzah Maror, and then we say Pesach. Pesach Zu. This Pesach. Point, and we say why. Why are we doing it?
Okay.
Then there's a few, and then we say Matzah Zu. Why do we have Matzah? Why do we have Mar? It's 3 short paragraphs that explain the reasons. Okay. Then we wash our hands, and this time we wash our hands with a bracha. Now you might ask, listen, we've been sitting at the Pesach Seder. We already washed our hands. And we haven't had Hesech Hadas, right? We've been at the Seder the entire time. Why do I need to wash my hands again? So we're afraid that that there's a chance somebody touched something which would obligate a new bracha. Just while I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm sitting here like going like this sometimes and like this sometimes. And people, we touch our hair, we touch, so people, our hands move a lot, especially yeshiva guys. As the joke goes, if you want to keep a yeshiva guy quiet, just tie his hands. So. That's it. Atzlacha Rabbah, the guy's stuck. So because the hands could touch, so we go wash our hands anew, and this time with a bracha, because it is because of matzah. Now we get to maitzi matzah. What do we do by maitzi matzah? The head of the household picks up the 3 matzahs, makes the bracha of HaMoed. Then what we do is, and your local favorite Haggadah will probably tell you what to do, but we then release the bottom matzah and we make the second blessing of al achilas matzah. So again, we make HaMoed on the 2 whole ones with the broken one in the middle. Then we release the bottom one and we have a second blessing of al achilas matzah. Why? So, we need lechem mishnah for every Yom Tov meal. This is a Yom Tov meal. The Pesach is a Yom Tov meal. So we need 2 whole matzahs. At the same time, there's a shaila, there's a question whether if al achilas matzah should be made on a broken one, on the lechem aini, or it should be made on a sholim. So this process takes care of all considerations. You have the 2, you release one, you have both the whole and the broken, and everything is handled. How much matzah do we need to eat? So according to Moshe Heinemann Shlita, it's 1/3 of a hand matzah or a half of a machine matzah. Now sometimes you have unusual, you have like a small hand matzah. I'm not talking about small, there's usually like a standard size hand matzah, there's large ones, so it's 1/3 of that, or a half of a machine matzah. In a case of a medical need, he says you could cut that in half. So it would be a 1/6 of a hand matzah or a 1/4 of a square matzah. And if a person cannot eat matzah, let's say a person doesn't have teeth, or we have a family maisa where, I don't remember which bubby it was, but one of my sisters, apparently, she went to visit one of my grandmothers, and she saw my grandmother getting ready for bed, and she took off her sheitel, and she took out her teeth, and she asked her if she could take out her eyes too. She was like very impressed with her bubby's ability to pull her teeth out and pull her hair out, and she's wondering if this is, like Mr. Potato, you could like just take your arm out and put it back in, how exactly this works. So let's say a person can't eat, they don't have bite, they don't have their teeth, their dentures aren't working. I had this, as I think I've shared previously, the Pesach before we moved to St. Louis, I came down with the mumps 2 days before Pesach, and my saliva glands didn't work, and I couldn't chew. Matzah is very dry, obviously. Yeah. I couldn't chew it, and I had no saliva to get it down. No saliva. So I had to crunch it. I had to crunch up the matzah and just yank it down with water. It's a good thing I eat kebabs. Otherwise it would be in big trouble. But if somebody can't chew for whatever reason, or can't have it, so then an ounce and a half of shmura matzah meal. You can also take an ounce and a half of matzah meal, shmura matzah meal, and you could put it down as well. In volume, yeah.
My grandfather did.
Okay. Your grandfather did? Beautiful. Yeah. Okay. We recline while eating matzah, and from the time we begin maitzi matzah, a person shouldn't speak unnecessarily through korich, because it's considered one consistent mitzvah. So we have motzi matzah, then we get to marar. We eat marar twice. We're going to eat it right now by achilas marar and by the korich sandwich. If one is using pure horseradish, so it's the volume of 1.1 ounces. However, if you're doing this by korich, you only need 0.7 ounces, okay, because we're more lenient on the korech. If a person is using romaine lettuce, it should cover an 8 by 10 area of the flat leaves. If you're using stalks, you obviously need less because stalks are thicker. And very often people have the whole romaine with the stalks. A lot of people got very excited about charaisas. Some people don't like charaisas. Other people love charaisas, and they take their mar and they dip it into the charaisas and they eat charaisas with a little bit of mar. Okay, so the mitzvah, the rabbanon is al achilas mar, not al achilas charaisas. So we have to make sure that we're tasting the mar, and not just eating charaisas. So it's proper to, if you took a good dip, to maybe shake off a little bit of charaisas, so as not to remove the bitter taste. Okay. Now we get to korich. Korich is the matzah marar sandwich. Maybe in the Fogel house, Chaim. In the Tella house, that sandwich doesn't last. It goes one bite, one crunch, and now it's all over the floor, and you're probably feeding your pets more than this. So the reason why we do this is because there's the machlekes between Hillel and the Chachamim. how to explain the verse in the Torah that says the Korban Pesach was eaten al matzos u'merayrim echlu, with matzah and mar. Hill says the matzah, mar, and the Korban Pesach was eaten together like a shawarma. All right, so you had a wrap, you had the matzah wrap, which they used to have soft matzahs. Nowadays they're all hard. It's a chumrah that we have. Svardim sometimes we'll have soft ones, but as a machmir we have it hard. Then you have the mar, and they would put the meat in. We don't have the meat now that have a Korban Pesach till the Beis Hamikdash is built. We should be zeicha this year to have that. Hill says it's got to be eaten together, so we make the matzah and mar together. Okay, and we also recline by the kairich, which is surprising, could be surprising. We recline by matzah, we don't recline by mar. Matzah is royalty, mar is bitterness. When the royalty and bitterness comes together, freedom and bitterness comes together, we do still recline to show that Hashem's koyach of rachamim, the matzah, is always stronger than the tzaras. Okay, now we get to Shulchan Aruch. This is some people's favorite part of the Suda, of the Seder. Now is when we have the Suda, and a person should enjoy the Suda. We should have good food at the Suda, but one has to make sure not to eat or drink excessively. First of all, because we didn't have an appetite for the Afikaiman. We aren't finished yet, and Achilas Gasa is Loishma Achila. Okay? Excessive eating is not called eating. So if a person's stuffed and now they're eating the Afikaiman, they're not going to fulfill their mitzvah. That's reason number one. Reason number two is that we don't want to become, when a person overeats, they become tired, and we don't want to get too tired or drowsy. We have not yet fulfilled the mitzvah of halal. Some people have a minhag to eat an egg at the Seder. I don't know, it wasn't always my family's minhag, but I've seen a lot of people doing this. And that's interesting. Another thing that leads to why Jews have a hard time keeping their emotions in one place. Right? There's comedians that talk about, like, at the chuppah you have to break a glass. You have to remember the korban. Like, you can never be too happy. You can never be right. So Tisha B'Av always falls out the same night as the Seder. So this year we already know Tisha B'Av is going to fall out Wednesday night, Thursday. We already know that. So it reminds us of the destruction and when we used to offer the Korban Pesach. So some people have a custom to eat the egg. It's not a mitzvah. You don't have to, like I said, it's not, but for those who have that custom. And then there's a general custom not to eat anything roasted at the Pesach Seder if it's like meat or chicken. Okay, because the Pesach was roasted on flames. So it should be something that's cooked or baked instead of roasted. So we don't serve grilled meat, chicken, so on and so forth. It should be something that has a little bit of gravy with it. So baked or cooked is okay. Yeah.
A roaster, it's like a separate machine that you, I guess, roast, but it's really
baked.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Right,
sure.
it's a roasting pan, but you bake it in an oven.
It's basically an oven because
If there's gravy and there's juice, which I think it does, it keeps in its gravy. It's no problem. There's no problem. Okay. Now, again, we said in the beginning, know your people, know your Seder, know, be seichel, common sense. It's not about how other people run their Seder, nor is it about how my Pesach Seder has been run in the past. This year, what's the proper way to run it? If my Pesach Seder this year has people that, they're itching to get to the matzah and the mar and the shulchan aruch, and for me to share 8,000 divrei Torah is really, I see everybody falling asleep. So then you wait till people have food in their bellies. Sometimes a rabbi has to know this. Sometimes wait for the Adam to have kiddush before you give a long drush. Right? So you got to know. It's a little late. Maybe you should share Dvar Torah during the Kiddush. Not always in its regular time. So if you get a feel for the Seder, you feel you got to move it along, maybe the time to share a lot of the Divrei Torah of Magid even, that you would have otherwise have shared, or the story, might be during Shulchan Aruch, when people are a little, people have more, are in more of a relaxed setting. Okay, and that leads us to Tzofim. By Tzofim, now is the Afikaiman. The Afikaiman is brought back. Afikaiman is a term that was used for dessert, and from the time we eat the Afikaiman, one should not eat anything after the Afikaiman, because we're supposed to end the night with the taste of Afikaiman in our mouth. What about drinking? So there's different opinions about drinking. I would say to be safe, again, there are those who allow other drinks, but to be safe, outside of the last cups of wine or grape juice, one should stick to water. After there's no problem drinking after Afikaiman, but to keep the taste, if you start drinking things that are highly acidic, or soda, or things like that, so that's also going to remove the taste, right? So if one sticks with water, or maybe some seltzer, It's not going to remove the taste, and that would be okay. I've seen, my parents used to do this. I haven't seen this in too many homes since then. But there are people who keep a piece of afikaimen year round. Because matzah, mem tzadi hey, is an acronym for Mikol Tzara Hatzileni. From all tzaras it saves me. I remember my parents used to keep a little round piece of matzah on top of their thermostat. Anybody see this in somebody's home? Like they keep like little pieces, and they keep it from one Pesach to the next Pesach, and then they would change it out. It's not a halacha or anything, just a thing to find a thing that people do in a Yiddish home. Huh?
Why the thermostat?
No, probably because that's where it was noticeable, and they didn't need to put up a shelf. So you stick it on top. They stuck it on top of the thermostat. Yeah. Don't do it on top of your thermostat. I'm just saying. I'm just pointing out. Okay, Mikol Tzara Hatzileni. That's Safa. That leads us to Baruch, right? So Birchas Hamazon. Although throughout the year it's common to honor a guest with leading the benching. If there's a zimun, if there's 3 Jewish men present at the Pesach Seder, it's proper for the one leading the Seder. They should be the one to lead the zimun. It shouldn't be a kavod that's given over to others. And then finally we have Hallel and Nirtza. Hallel is not something to be glossed over. It's one of the mitzvahs midrabanan that we spoke about in the first year. It's the last rabbinical mitzvah that we're going to fulfill. So if a person's ready to go to sleep following the meal, or a person can't, the suda's taking too long for them, or they're not feeling well, or whatever it is, one should at least recite Hallel on their own and drink the 4th cup to make sure that they completed all the mitzvahs midrabanan. And the last thing is that during Hallel as well, if there's a zimun, if there's 3 men who have eaten together, it's proper to recite the hodu of Hallel. Hodu l'Hashem ki tov ki l'amcha. Yom Yisrael. If you have 3 men, you should recite it like we do it in shul, responsively, as well as Ana Hashem Aishiana. Okay, if there's no zimun, if there's no 3 adult men, then we just go straight through like we would recite it b'yechidus, like we recite it alone, and that's something interesting to keep in mind as well. So that's a wrap up of the general halachas of the Pesach Seder. And now let's just for a few minutes, about 7 minutes or so, we said we're going to be getting into some halachas of Chol HaMoed. The halachas of Chol HaMoed are not often learned, not often taught, not often understood. What is Chol HaMoed? So, and it's fascinating when you look around the community, you really see a difference between those people who have ever learned about what Chol HaMoed is and those who have not. So maybe we can put ourselves into the category of people who, at least for a few minutes, have spent a little bit of time on this. So there's a fascinating Gemara Psachim. Let's scare ourselves for a moment. The Gemara Psachim tells us that Kol HaMevazeh HaMoedes, anybody who rejects Chol HaMoed, Kilu Oived Avodah Zarah, it's like idol worship. A person who does not respect Chol HaMoed, it's like worshipping idols. Shenemar, as it says, Elohei Masecha Leisasa Lecha, don't make molten images for yourself. And afterwards it says, as Chag HaMatzos Tishmar, protect the Chag HaMatzos, right? Protect the Yom Tif of Matzos. So even the entire Yom Tif has to be honored and respected. Okay. Now, the reason why we don't get involved in business of Chol HaMoed is because we can get overly occupied physically or emotionally with it, and it's going to take away from Simchas Yom Tif. It's going to detract from the joy of Yom Tif. And since Chol HaMoed was given for a person to eat and drink and be joyful and learn Torah and to spend time as a Yom Tif, if Chazal were to have permitted, if the sages were to have permitted transactions and business on Chol HaMoed, we'd be busy the same way we are on every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with it. It would be a regular day of the week, which unfortunately Chol HaMoed becomes like a break in the Yom Tif for some people, and it's just a regular work day. And what's Chol HaMoed? I'm not sure. I just know that davening took a little bit longer, and some people wore tefillin, people didn't wear tefillin. But otherwise, besides for that, it was a regular Monday. It was a regular Tuesday. And Chazal did not want this. So they said there's no working. Others say that it's connected to the writing on Chol HaMoed, but we'll get into this. Okay. So it's interesting. Chol HaMoed is actually an oxymoron. It's Chol, it's mundane. Chol means no holiness. And then it's a Moed. It's a regular holiday. It's Chol HaMoed. So the words itself are confusing. Is it Chol or is it a Moed? So it has its very own unique and specific halachas. So some halachas are permitted to do. Some Shabbos halachas, for example, you could do Chol HaMoed. Others are forbidden. What's important to keep in mind is that even things that are permitted on Chol HaMoed are only permitted if they're done L'tzorech HaMoed, if they're done for the sake of Chol HaMoed. In other words, I have something to benefit for on the holidays. Okay, now in general, the malachas that one may not do on Shabbos, one may not do on Yom Tif, and one may not do on Chol HaMoed unless it's being done again for the Yom Tif. But there are specific malachas that Chazal ruled are going to be forbidden. So with that word salad, that was a little bit of a word salad, that's Rabbi Cheskel reminded me of that word this morning. Sometimes you say things over and over with like a little bit of a twist, and to everybody else it sounds like you just said the same thing. I'm not really sure what happened. Let's get into this. So there's 5 categories of malacha, 5 categories of labor that are allowed on Chol HaMoed. Okay, 5 categories. Now, before we get to the 5 categories, I want to say two halachas that aren't connected to either of this. And that is, first of all, we say Yalav Yavo in davening and in benching. If I forget Yalav Yavo in davening, I do need to repeat the Shmona Esrei. If I forget Yalav Yavo in benching, I do not need to repeat Perchas HaMazon. Here's why. We all need to daven. So since I didn't daven correctly by leaving out Yalav Yavo, I need to repeat it. I didn't daven correctly and I have an obligation to daven. I don't need to wash and say Birchas HaMazon on Chol HaMoed. Huh?
But once you did.
So once I did, the Yalav Yavo is not a chiyuv on me. Okay, but I ate. So it's like a regular eating. Memela, there's no chiyuv suda on Chol HaMoed, there's no obligation to wash. If I forget the Yalav Yavo from my benching, I got my benching. I didn't need to do this, and therefore you don't need to repeat benching. Okay, so davening, which I had to do, I have to do it right. Say Yalav Yavo, repeat it. Benching that I didn't need to do, I chose to do. If I don't do it right, I don't need to go back and
I
do
hear
it.
that by Musaf, but I don't hear that by Shachars, because by Shachars you have to be able to say anyway. But mainly you're going to say Shachars every day of the week.
Yeah.
So there's no
No, of course there's. It's chiyuv daven
when
like
I
this.
see just benching every other day of the week, just like I do it. Just like I
You
do
have to daven.
But it's not do it the Yom Tov.
it.
We'll talk about it afterwards. Good. We'll talk about it afterwards. That's number 1. Number 2 is that that's interesting is also Amira La'akum, saying something to a non-Jew is forbidden on Chol HaMoed. Okay? Forbidden on Chol HaMoed. So the same way I can't mow my lawn on Chol HaMoed, I can't ask a non-Jew to mow my lawn. Right? The same way on Shabbos, since I can't do it, if I can't do it, I can't ask a non-Jew to do it. Chol HaMoed too. If I can't do it, I can't ask a non-Jew to do it. Okay. So what are the 5 categories of things that are permitted to do? So we said the starting point is one should not do malacha. That's the starting point of Chol HaMoed. But there are 5 categories that are permitted, and they are anything that, number 1, is a moed need. I could do on Chol HaMoed. We'll explain soon what that is. Called tzorech HaMoed. Number 2 is for ochel nefesh, eating. It's permitted on Chol HaMoed. Number 3, if something is a tzarchei rabim, if it's needed for the public, it's also permitted Chol HaMoed. Number 4 is if it's something that's a davar ha'aved. If I don't do it, it's going to cause me a loss. It is now permitted on Chol HaMoed. Okay, Shabbos not. If it's Chol HaMoed, it's davar ha'aved, I'm going to lose money if I don't do this, it's permitted. And the 5th category of somebody who's allowed to do malacha Chol HaMoed is a poel she'ein lo ma yochal, somebody who simply doesn't have enough to live on. And I need to work, otherwise I ain't getting by. Okay, so also that person is allowed. Let's quickly go through these 5 categories. I said 7 minutes, 37 minutes. Let's quickly run through this. A tzorech HaMoed, something that's needed for Yom Tif, is allowed, such as driving a car somewhere. If I get a flat tire, I need my tire to be fixed, I could change the tire. Many people know how to do it. I don't need a specialist to do this. Assembling a toy as well, changing batteries on an alarm clock, things that you need a Maisa Uman, things that are a specialty are not allowed if it's a Tzorech HaMoed. Okay, so big home repairs, important shoe repairs that most people don't know how to do. It's called a Maisa Uman, sewing things. That's called a specialty. And a person is not allowed to do, even if it's a Tzorech HaMoed, even if it's a Moed need. Okay. Now, If it's needed for eating, then it becomes allowed even if it's a specialty. So, my oven breaks on Chol HaMoed. I can get it fixed because I need it for eating. Even though I don't want to fix my oven, you need a specialist to come down, that's okay. We need to eat. If a person, however, would have 2 or 3 ovens in their kitchen, and you could use your oven, then it would seem that one should not get it fixed on Chol HaMoed. Also, if something if your body needs, it's permitted. So let's say a toilet breaks, or there's an issue with the sewer, things of that sort. Kavod abrius, these things are permitted on Chol HaMoed, because the body needs it. The same thing would hold true, for example, eyeglasses repair. A person can't really see properly if their eyeglasses break. Usually you need a specialist to fix it. I'm not talking about bending it back simple, but to make new glasses. Right? So that's the body needs it. That would be allowed. I can even hire a specialist if it's going to cause me a hefsid meruba. It's going to be a big loss of money. So, for example, a sewer collapse, a roof leak, and there's rain in the forecast. And if it leaks, you're going to have damage, and you don't know what it could be big problems. So it's permitted to get that fixed.
So you can do that in the Jewish neighborhood?
Yes, because it's completely mutter. Because it's not like something that nobody else is allowed to do. It's mutter. So if there's a leak in a roof or something's needed, your neighbors have to judge you favorably under those circumstances. It would be permitted to do. Correct. Now, haircuts are not allowed on Chol HaMoed, even though it's not considered that you need a specialist. Sometimes some people have their wife cut their hair, or their kids cut their hair, or their brother, whatever. Or some people give themselves their own haircut. You can go to a salon. There are specialists, but a lot of people can give themselves a basic, or they can get a basic barber haircut without a specialist. But we stay away from that. It's not allowed because the Chacham didn't want people coming into Yom Tov. It's a big rush. And you know what the number one thing people forget about? Getting a haircut and shaving. L'kavod Yom Tov. Getting themselves ready. And if I say to myself, hey Tendler, you got so much to do, you can go with stubble for a few days. Chol HaMoed's in 2 days. This year, 3 days. Right? Big deal. No, you can go 3 days. It's a lack of cover to the Yom Tov. To go into Yom Tov with stubble and then shave on the Yom Tov. So the Chacham made a gzeira, no haircuts and shaving on Chol HaMoed, so that will come into Yom Tov with a properly prepared. Laundry we don't do also for the same reason. People are going to otherwise come into Yom Tov with dirty laundry and be like, oh, I'll do it on Chol HaMoed. We want people to be prepared, that we walk into Yom Tov, even though it'll be a little more hectic. But no, my clothes are prepared for Yom Tov. This is covered for the Yom Tov. Now there's exceptions to this. Children who easily spoil themselves, they spoil themselves too. But they soil themselves sometimes if somebody is elderly or people have various needs with their body. So if there's times where there are kulas leniencies under the circumstances, and it would be okay. Tablecloths are allowed to be washed on Chol HaMoed because you're going to need it for Yom Tov. That would be okay. Specialty items are allowed as well. Okay, so let's say if somebody needs a uniform for work, they're allowed to wash that on Chol HaMoed to have the next day. Sometimes some hosiery, support hosiery, or things that are needed for the body will be okay. You're allowed to iron on Chol HaMoed, but taking it to a dry cleaners is not allowed because that's considered a ma'aseh umah. Now it's a professional work, and that's going to be problematic. So those things, that's the category of things that are allowed that are tzoach HaMoed. Ochel nefesh. What about cooking? So I'm allowed to cook on Yom Tov. You're not allowed to cook on Chol HaMoed. There's an interesting halacha. Keep this in mind. I can't cook on Chol HaMoed to prepare for a simcha that I'm having in a month. I'm making a simcha in a month, or I like preparing my dinners for the next 8 weeks, and Chol HaMoed is just like an easy time to cook. You're not allowed to cook on Chol HaMoed for after the Yom Tov. I'm allowed to cook on Chol HaMoed for the Yom Tov. Aside from some of the halachas being prohibited, also a person should try to have simchas Yom Tov, which means if a person can have chicken or meat on Chol HaMoed at some point during each day, or drink a little bit of wine, that would be bakavadik, that would be respectful for Yom Tov. And a person also should, like we said, stay focused. I'm way over time. I feel better. but I'm going to hold it here. Just this last idea. A person should stay focused on Yom Tov, which means we also shouldn't book appointments that aren't necessary for the Yom Tov on Chol HaMoed. So sometimes, it's easy to just book a doctor's appointment, a dentist appointment, a medical procedure. If there's a pressing need, obviously, don't push it off. But if it's just out of convenience, that hey, I'm not going to work anyway on this coming Monday and it's Chol HaMoed, I might as well book myself a doctor's appointment, which is more convenient than doing it the next week. That's not covered Yom Tov, and therefore one shouldn't do it in that way. Okay, there's still 3 more categories, but over time, I apologize. We'll hold it here. A wonderful Pesach.